One of the things that are about as common as Ninjago leaks are Ninjago animation errors. And there is definitely no harm in them because Ninjago is this quirky little show that I can't help but love. But I can also point them out. So what this is going to be is the start of a little mini-series where I'm going to take a handful of seasons and I'm going to point out interesting animation errors. But a few ground rules first. The first one being is that I'm not going to point out every single error that Ninjago have made, because I would be here forever and some are just simply not interesting. So before you comment saying, I missed this instance where Lloyd was in a ZX suit, just understand that I'm not going to point out every single animation error, because if I did, there would be a lot. And I don't think it makes for an interesting video if I just sat there talking about suit differences, because I'd be here forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. But for this episode, we are going to cover the pilots through to season 3, and I have found one animation error that is interesting from the pilot, and I have found 2 from season 1, 2, and 3 each. So let's get into it. The interesting animation error from the pilot is actually when the ninja are asleep in the King of Shadows episode. For an extremely brief shot when Kai is waking up, we can see only Jay's legs, but if you look closely at the legs, they're actually his flight suit from his flashback. Now, I know I said I wasn't going to cover suit changes, because typically speaking, they are quite abundant, but the reason why this one has made its way in is because I never noticed it until now. And it's also the one that makes the least amount of sense, because typically speaking, when the ninjas accidentally change into their pilot suits again, or if Lloyd changes into a ZX suit again, it's typically because they were the placeholders. But why is it that Jay's flight suit reappeared in this one scene specifically? And it's very subtle to say the least. But it is a very funny animation error overall, because it is a very weird instance to say the least. And Jay is actually pretty renowned for having errors of being in his pilot suit. But for this one specific instance, he used a flight suit that he had for one scene. We're going to move on to season 1 now, and this one is a fairly common animation error to begin with, but it's definitely one that I've always wanted to talk about. The very infamous scene from Home where we see a shot of the ninja looking around the burned monastery, but if you look closely at Wu, he has black eyebrows. And this again is a very weird animation error, because why would the Wu model have a different face rig? Because some people thought it was Zane, but if you look too closely, you notice that the eyebrows are actually too slim, and some people thought it was even Cole. But again, the eyebrows don't match. They are pencil thin eyebrows that we don't see anywhere else. But of course brings up the question of how the hell did a completely different face end up on Wu's model? And no one really knows, and there's been no answer. The most we've ever had reference to it is the Golden Hour short, where when Wu is de-aging for a second, he looks like the animation error. But this is definitely one of the most fascinating animation errors that we've had in the show, in my opinion, because it makes absolutely no sense. It only appears once, and we do not know where that head came from. Number 3, we are going to be going to the episode The Snake King. And this episode has an animation error I never saw until I researched this video. When the ninja arrive at the lost city of Ouroboros, we have a panning shot showing all the snakes in the stands waiting for Pythor to speak. Now, if you look extremely close, you can see a Baitar who is T-posing. And not only is he T-posing, you can see his arms are stretched as well. And this is really weird to say the least, because how did this specific snake get away from it when every other snake around him is fully animated? Like I said, this is an extremely interesting animation detail to me, because he had to get past the production stage, where an animator surely would have been putting animations on every other snake around him, but this one managed to slip by the cracks, and now that I've seen it, I can't unsee it. For season 2, we are going to look at Pirates vs Ninja first, and this again is an extremely one-off animation error that is fascinating to say the least. After Garmadon fails to shoot down the Ultra Dragon with the Mega Weapon, he blames the Serpentine for what happened. The thing is that as Garmadon is storming off, he walks in front of a Rattler, and the thing about it is that the eyes of the Rattler specifically overlap onto Garmadon's helmet. Now this is both fascinating and extremely confusing to say the least, because this, as far as we're aware, has never happened in Ninjago's runtime. And it calls into questioning the technicality of the Rattler's model, because why is the Rattler's eyes above every other layer in the shot, including Garmadon? And it's such a weird animation error that you would miss in a split second, but it's there, and now I cannot unsee it. Again, the last one for season 2 is going to be another Wu animation error, because he seems to be right with them. Because I'm not pointing out all the instances of when his beard is off model, or when his eyes are off model, or any of these little details. But we are going to talk about the beard, but for a different reason. In the shot where we see Dr. Julian's robot give all of the ninja and Wu their tea, we see them above head. And the strange thing is that Wu is entirely missing his beard. Again, this is a very weird animation error, because why would Wu's model not have the beard on it? It's an extremely weird one to see, but once you know it's there, you can't unsee it, because it gives you a full shot of Wu's torso, which is extremely rare to say the least. Again, being an instance of something in the production cycle getting completely missed, and I'm not sure how a detail as important as Wu's beard gets missed like that. But here we are, and it's fascinating to see, because as far as I'm aware, this doesn't happen again. But we're going to get into Rebooted now, and we are going to take a look at the Surge, because this is an extremely weird detail that does appear again in the show. So for some reason, every single time when Dareth is wearing a helmet, it seems to make the helmet a lot bigger. In this instance, we see the Helmet of Shadows completely expand to encompass Dareth's hair, instead of getting rid of his hair and just placing it above his head. Like I said, this does happen another time in Ninjago's runtime, mainly being in Hands of Time, where Dareth puts on the Samurai X helmet and the helmet expands to about twice its size. This must be a weird instance of the animators making sure you can see Dareth's hair while he's holding a helmet, when in reality he shouldn't be able to see it at all. But again, the fact that it happened twice is extremely interesting, and in the opening shot of season 3, it's weird to say the least. But the last one for today is going to come from the episode The Void. And in the start of the episode, where the ninja are talking to Wu and Garmadon on the screen, there is a very weird detail. Now this is going to be the most controversial one to say the least, because you can make the argument that the screen is staticking and it is glitching out. But the weird thing is that there are multiple instances in that scene where you see Garmadon's hair completely stretch out without the use of any glitching visuals. His hair straight up just moves, because his head doesn't move along with it. The hair completely stretches upwards and goes back into place. So this is an animation error. And again, it is fascinating, because it clearly must have been an error when it came to the actual glitching part of the screen. But for some reason, only Garmadon's hair moved throughout. And it is fascinating to say the least, and it's a fun detail I never noticed until now. But those are all of the animation errors I will cover for these seasons, and like I said, next episode will cover the next handful. It will be season 4 through till season 7. But if I were to rank the most interesting to the least interesting of all these errors, the first one would definitely be Rattler's eyes. Next up being Wu's eyebrows, then being Wu's beard, then would be the T-posing Baitar, then would be Jay's flight suit legs, then Dareth's big helmet, and then last but not least is the Garmadon stretchy hair, because that one is the most explainable of the bunch. But the more you go to the more interesting, the less it's explainable. But that about does it for the animation errors that I found interesting from the pilots through till Rebooted, and let me know what you think of them, and any interesting errors that you saw in those seasons. But other than that, thank you guys for watching. Let me know if you want the next episode soon. Take care and